and head over. But speaking of automation, we want to kick off with this fun little story because Red Hat Summit was the big event that happened last week. And one of those big announcements from the show happened around Ansible, one of everyone's favorite automation platform. The first announcement was Ansible Lightspeed, which was an AI-assisted code creation platform powered by IBM Watson, everyone's favorite Jeopardy player. Users can input natural language prompts, receive YAML code in response for playbooks. Ansible also is going to be getting an event-driven capability in version 2.4 that rolls out next month in June. This increases the number of ways that users can activate Ansible scripts across hybrid cloud platforms. You can trigger scripts to run based on things like outage information, service ticket creation, and even if your configurations are drifting apart from each other. Now, Chris, I know that you've worked a lot with Ansible in the past, and hybrid cloud is one of the areas that you spend a lot of time researching. What do these new Ansible features really give potential users when it comes to the power of harnessing Red Hat for hybrid cloud?
Yeah, I think this is really cool. And I mean, maybe obviously to a lot of folks, this follows on the heels of many other announcements and projects and applications around this same thing of applying large language models and generative AI to make interfaces more intuitive and to make programming easier, right? So obviously some folks started playing around with this on OpenAI's ChatGPT a while ago and figured out that you could get network device configurations, security device configurations, and even code out of that box. OpenAI has since released Codex, which is more targeted to actually generating code. And then we've seen kind of a flurry of other folks kind of piling on in really interesting ways, right? So there's GitHub's Copilot. Microsoft has now put IntelliCode into their Visual Studio. The DeepMind kind of Google partnership thing has come out with Alpha Code. There's AWS with Code Whisperer. There's even WP Code, which helps you with WordPress and HTML and CSS. And there's a long, long list. If you search around, I'm sure you can find more and more of these. And so this is kind of, in some ways, yet another AI coding tool. But I think it's good. I think that this is making things more approachable. And especially when you talk about network automation and creating YAML files, this seems like a really practical way to use AI and this kind of intuitive, kind of intent-based interface to tell it what you want to do and get these YAML files kind of created for you, or at least have help along the way. Like I said, especially in networking where it's not necessarily developers who have spent, decades like kind of learning YAML as a language. It's usually folks who are trying to get practical problems solved right now. And or Ansible goes obviously beyond the network as well to other infrastructure. But, folks who are infrastructure engineers and not developers, getting this kind of a boost, I think is really, really cool and makes it much more accessible to a lot more folks. And also, even if you do really know what you're doing with YAML, you still make mistakes, right? And so having, this this tool like Lightspeed, Ansible Lightspeed, kind of looking over your shoulder and checking your code as you go is nice and reassuring, right? It helps make sure that there's not going to be those kind of fail at scale, crazy automation events because you've got everything checked and looked at it ahead of time. This is actually part of Red Hat's Project Wisdom, which is a bigger collaboration with their parent company, IBM, to give Ansible new capabilities through a trained AI model. So it'll be interesting to see how this develops as well. I think we'll probably see more of this type of stuff, both from Red Hat and from others. And then, the other piece of that you talked about, this event-driven automation, also very, very, very cool, right? This takes Ansible to another level of having these triggers, right? And so just to kind of roll back on that, right? Event-based automation is really kind of the next step, I think, in getting closer and closer to self-driving infrastructure. And so what this means is when something happens, something else happens automatically, right? Where a lot of automation is, human-driven, where you go and you say, okay, I want this, network deployed. I want this server, set up. I want these VMs deployed. And event-driven says, oh, we're going to check, we're going to watch, and see what happens, and then do things. As you mentioned, right? Some of these things that could happen would be maybe password resets, or compute and storage adjustments, augmenting service tickets with additional information. You mentioned, addressing configuration drift, doing regular backups or backups when storage gets to a certain level, this kind of thing. These are error-prone tasks, and event-driven Ansible can reduce those. It's really cool. They've kind of essentially connecting the infrastructure and applications to these observability tools. And they've got a pretty good list of partners coming out of the gate. There's Cisco Thousand Eyes, CyberArk, Dynatrace, F5, IBM's Instana, IBM's Turbonomic, Palo Alto Networks, and Zabbix are all in here. And then they've already got systems integrators trained on this. So Kyndryl and Worldwide Technology and several others have already been trained. So it'll be really cool to see this all rolled out in the world, especially when you start to see these combinations of things happening, right? So the Lightspeed kind of giving you that AI help, event driven. You don't even need to be involved. You don't need AI because it's just going to happen automatically. And they also made some great other announcements this week. The Red Hat Developer Hub, which is going to streamline development by creating kind of an opinionated framework and some curated tools with languages and resources. Red Hat Enterprise Linux Insights updates is going to aim to reduce complexity across the hybrid cloud. Red Hat Service Interconnect is going to make it easier for developers to migrate apps across environments and communicate across container clusters and different networks. And there's a few other updates that are really, really cool, including some OpenShift AI upgrades as well. So neat stuff to watch from Red Hat, and definitely some great improvements on the Ansible front.